the YouTube channel for Elementor Chicago. And that's where we are. We are Elementor Chicago here. We're going to go over 3 things that all website owners should know about privacy laws. Before we get into that, just some housekeeping here. The meetup is going to be about 2 hours long, maybe less, maybe a little more, somewhere in there, though. We'll end about 8:30 Central. And if you want to use your video, you can turn your video on. But I do ask that you please mute your microphone while Hans and Donata are doing their presentation, unless you are speaking up for a question at some point throughout or after. They'll let you know when they will be taking questions. And also this will be recorded. So again, if you don't want to see your face on the recording, I suggest keep your camera off. So what we're going to do here, it's just going to be the main presentation, and then we'll do some Q&A at the end. So post your questions in the chat and they may monitor it there, but they'll take some Q&A at the end of the presentation. All right, so let's meet the presenters. My notes here. All right, first we have Donata Gilrud. She is the president of Termageddon. Her experience is she's a licensed privacy attorney. She's also vice chair of the American Bar Association's e-privacy committee and Chicago chair of the International Association of Privacy Professionals. Her hobbies include reading any book about submarines. She also loves gardening and nature. So that is Donata. And then we also have, we have Hans Gilrud. So Hans is the vice president of Termageddon. His experience, he founded and sold a 12-person web design agency in downtown Chicago. His hobbies, he enjoys watching after his chickens and his bees. I want to hear about this, please. That's interesting. And then also he loves to fish for trout, salmon, smallmouth, muskie, and catfish. So you fishers out there may have some conversation with Hans after they do their presentation. So at this point, I'm going to pass it to you guys. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and then you should be able to share yours. So again, if I see you that you're, if anybody out there, if you're making a little noise and not on mute, I may mute you. So don't take offense if I do. But okay, take it away, guys.
Awesome. Well, I got to start it off with a compliment to Donata. She never likes to talk about herself, but as of today, the American Bar Association has voted her to run the board that will be a working group, excuse me, run the working group that will be advising legislation on privacy laws throughout the U.S. So that's a pretty cool accomplishment. I'm very proud of her. As her husband, I need to figure out how to do something with my life. Maybe I need to like work out more or like, you know, focus my attention on becoming a house husband of some kind or something. But yeah, super proud of you for that. So.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Do you want to share screen and start the presentation rolling? Yep.
And we can assure you that, yes, this is a conversation about privacy, but we will try to keep it as entertaining as possible and as informative as possible, and we are really excited to answer all the questions that have already been submitted. So
yeah, and I think we'll be taking questions at the end, right?
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Yes.
And just so you know, when we share the screen, it's kind of hard to see the chat. So if we ignore whatever you say on the chat, it's just because we can't see it. That's pretty much it.
I got to figure out how to get my screen a little bit.
Sorry to interrupt you guys. There is in a Canva box. You can maximize that.
Where can we? Oh, I see it.
Right.
Yes. All right. I have my Zoom gallery photos blocking it. Okay. Nice. Thank you very much. All right.
Yeah, so today we're going to talk about the 3 things that you need to know about privacy. So whether you are building websites for others, whether you have your own website, or whether you're a larger agency, there's really some basic things that people in tech or business people need to know about privacy and what happens with their website and what the privacy requirements are for their website. Before we get started on that, I would like to note that even though I am an attorney, we're doing today's presentation as providing you with information only, and anything that we say here today is not legal advice. including when we answer your questions. And we always recommend retaining a privacy attorney, if you can do so, to give you more specific answers and make sure that things are tailored to your exact business and your exact needs.
Awesome.
All right. So we're going to talk about 3 things today. And of course, the dogs are already in here. We have a husky and a German Shepherd Great Pyrenees mix. So if she starts howling, I'm sorry, but that's just what it is. That's what's life like when you have a husky. So today we're going to talk about which websites need to have a privacy policy, why privacy policies are important, and for those of you building websites for others, why you should be the one to talk to your clients about privacy. So we're really hoping to bust some myths and give you a good overview of what privacy requirements are and what they're about. We won't go too far in depth into each privacy law, but you'll definitely get a good overview. So this is our About Us page. I don't know if we want to go through that since we already did. Okay. One thing that wasn't mentioned, though, we have the same last name. So for any of you that hasn't caught on yet, we're married. So yeah, if you'll see some banter, it's just married banter.
Yeah, married banter is all we provide.
Yeah.
So.
All right. So the first thing that we're going to talk about today is what websites need to have a privacy policy. So there's a lot of misconceptions here. So some people think that only e-commerce websites need to have a privacy policy, or only websites that sell personal information need to have one. So we're going to talk about how to easily determine whether your website or a website that you are building needs to have a privacy policy. So that's the first part. So we wanted to keep definitions to a minimum here, obviously, because they're kind of boring. But the one definition that we have in here is personally identifiable information, which is also referred to as PII. Now, PII is any data that could potentially identify someone. So examples of PII include name, email, phone number, or a physical address. Another great example is IP address, which is often collected by analytics companies. And when you combine PII with other information, that information becomes PII as well. So for example, my name is Donata. That's an example of PII, as that's a name. And I have a husky. So once you combine my name with the fact that I have a husky, the fact that I have a husky can become PII as well. And any website that has a contact form will be collecting personally identifiable information, or PII. Now this is an example from our own website. So a contact form, right? People can submit their comments, questions, concerns. They can inquire about your services. They can inquire about your products. So, contact forms will collect names, emails, phone numbers, things like that. As you can see, our contact form collects names and emails, which are examples of PII. Now, when you look at your own website, the important part is to look out for forms. So if you have a contact form, if you have a newsletter sign-up form, if you have an account creation form, if you have like a payment portal, even if your website is allowing people to make comments. So usually when you look at a blog and people can make comments on that blog, they will usually be asked to submit at least their name to make a comment. So all of those are examples of PII, and all of those are examples of things that you should look out for. So when you look at your website, look for things that collect PII, including forms. Analytics services do this as well, so that's something to keep an eye out on too. Now, any website that collects PII needs to have a privacy policy. And I think that's probably the most important takeaway of today's presentation. So if you tune out for the rest, make sure you remember that one fact. Any website that collects PII needs to have a privacy policy. So that means any website that has forms. any website that has analytics. Those websites need to have a privacy policy. So if your website has that, or you're building a website that has that, the light bulb should go off in your head saying, oh, wait, I'm building this form or I'm implementing this analytics service. Okay, that needs to have a privacy policy. So Hans, do you want to take the next part?
Sure.
Okay.
Why does the collection of PII matter? Well, privacy laws regulate the collection and use of PII. Privacy laws require websites to disclose what PII is collected, what is done with that PII, and who the PII is shared with. Now, there's a lot more that goes into what is disclosed on a privacy policy because of privacy law requirements. But again, with this being a condensed presentation, the biggest thing to take into account is that in general, the high-level objective of privacy laws are to let your users know how you collect your information, what is collected, what you do with that information, and who that information is shared with. And so often I hear people say, well, I collect email and name on contact forms, but I don't share that data with anyone. When I think what they really mean is they don't sell that data to anyone, because contact forms are almost by nature sharing data. And a good example is when a contact form gets submitted asking for name and email, you're already collecting name and email. But then when that form is submitted, very often it triggers an email that's sent to your inbox, the business owner's inbox, saying, hey, this person inquired on your website, and it provides all those details of the person's name and email. Well, that means that the website has now shared that data with an email service provider. Very often when a contact form is submitted, a backup gets stored in like the WordPress backend, meaning that you're sharing data with content management systems. And then very often if you have like a third party that can access the backend for your WordPress website, you need to disclose that you share that data with parties that need to operate the website.
Like your website designer or developer, when they go in to create new features or update plugins or whatever, they can go in and see that PII that you've collected. So it's important to note that, you know, if that's the case, that you share that information with them.
Yeah, and you know, I always like to take a step back here and just talk about the fact that, like, we think it's great. I think there's very few people on this earth that think that privacy laws are a bad thing. I think most people like the idea of having a right to their privacy. And what we'll get into shortly here is that the regulation of PII is occurring not on like a worldwide level, it's occurring on a statewide level or on a countrywide or continent-wide level. And there's each and every one of these privacy laws, for the most part, are unique and have their own unique disclosure requirements that go beyond, you know, what is collected, what is done with that PII, and who it's shared with.
Yeah, so there's several privacy laws that protect PII and that apply to the collection of PII by websites. So note that I didn't say sharing or selling or using. What matters to these privacy laws is that you collect it. So it doesn't really matter that you don't use it. It doesn't really matter that you don't sell it. Privacy laws will start applying to you as soon as you collect the PII. So there are several privacy laws. So the General Data Protection Regulation, otherwise known as GDPR, that's a privacy law that protects the PII of residents of the European Union. The California Online Privacy Protection Act of 2003, or CALOPA. This one is actually a very important one to note as a general concept. So CALOPA will apply to any website that collects the PII of residents of California. Now, as you know from using websites for many years now, probably, anyone from anywhere could submit their PII on a contact form. Contact forms don't usually say, don't submit your PII if you're not from California. So basically, because this law doesn't care where the business is actually located, the law can apply to virtually any website in the world. So it doesn't matter that you're not located in California. If your website collects the PII of California residents, that law will apply to you. the California Consumer Privacy Act. That one was a recent privacy law that went into effect January 1st of last year. And it has since been amended. So in the next couple of years, we'll see some changes there. Nevada Revised Statutes Chapter 603A, which was also amended into SB 220. Delaware Online Privacy Protection Act, and Canada's Personal Information Protection and Electronic Documents Act, also called PIPETA. So we should note that all of these laws can apply to businesses outside of that particular state or country, or union of countries in the case of the European Union. So it's important to note that you don't have to be located in any of these states or countries or unions or anything for these laws to apply to you. What really matters when it comes to the application of privacy laws is where you do business, where your customers reside, and whose PII you're collecting. So if you think about it, like we're located in Illinois and we have customers in Nevada who have purchased our service. So we need to comply with Nevada's privacy law because we have customers there. Or, we do business in Delaware. We need to make sure that we're compliant with that privacy law. We're collecting the PII of people from California, so we need to make sure that we're compliant with that. So just because you're not located in these places doesn't mean that you're off scot-free, pretty much. Now, when it comes to privacy law compliance, a lot of people say, all right, so there are privacy laws that are in place right now. What happens if I don't comply with them? So penalties for not complying with privacy laws can range from $2,500 per violation to 20 million euros or more in total. Now, when I say per violation, I don't mean per website or per policy. It's actually per website visitor whose privacy rights you infringed upon. So, for example, if you have 100 visitors from California to your website per month, that fine would be calculated as 2,500 times 100. I think it's also important to note that some places have a range of fines, while others have a very strict number of fines. So, for example, if you take the 20 million euros from the European Union, they use it more as a sliding scale. So depending on the severity of the violation, you could end up with less than 20 million euros. You could end up with more than 20 million euros in total, depending on how much money you make, all of that. But in the United States, the fine is very strictly $2,500 per violation. So there's nothing to take into account there. There's no, oh, well, this is my first mistake, or, oh, I only, I had a privacy policy, but it didn't have the right disclosures, but I still had one. There's no extraneous factors that are taken into account. It's only $2,500 per violation or more. So you have some places that have very strict numbers that they follow, versus other countries have more of like a sliding scale.
So outside of the fact that there's obviously a number of privacy laws out in the US, Canada, and beyond, there are also privacy bills here in America. And as you'll see this list, which actually at the beginning of today's call, we were talking about how this is being updated because it's a new year, but it still gives a good picture of reality, which is that there are more privacy laws coming. And this list right here is a list of the privacy bills in the US as of 2020. It will be updated for 2021 shortly. But I want to note a couple things in here. New York, if you take a look at New York, there's 6 privacy bills that they have proposed. Several of them apply to businesses of any size located anywhere. All of the bills that you see here would require a privacy policy to be updated. Sorry, and now back to New York. New York has proposed bills that will enable their citizens to pursue private right of action, meaning they can sue businesses located anywhere of any size for collecting their personal information without providing the proper disclosures aligned with that specific privacy law. So I think I mentioned earlier, you know, I think everyone is happy to have the right to privacy. What I think is concerning is that small business owners and nonprofits not only need to have a privacy policy, but they need to actually have a strategy to keep their policies up to date when new laws go into effect or existing laws are amended. Otherwise, the policy would become non-compliant with whatever new law is in existence.
Sure, and if I can touch on this chart a little bit as well. So all of these bills would require new disclosures for privacy policies. And what do we mean by that? Each law and each bill will actually state what a privacy policy needs to disclose. So for example, some laws will say that you need to list the PII that you're collecting. So for example, like name, email, phone number. Other laws will say that you need to list the categories of PII that you're collecting. So for example, identifying information or biometric information. So each of these bills have different requirements for what a privacy policy needs to include. And I do have to say that most of it is not intuitive. So it makes sense to say like, okay, this is the PII that I'm collecting. This is how I'm using it. This is who I share it with, right? But there's also a lot of, you know, non-obvious disclosures, like what's a toll-free phone number that consumers could contact you at to exercise their privacy rights? Within how many days will you respond to their requests? You know, where can consumers complain? You know, are you part of an external dispute resolution scheme? And, you know, you could go down this rabbit hole forever, which I feel like I'm starting to get there, which I really shouldn't. But, you know, there's a lot of non-intuitive disclosures. So what's important is to map all of these together, see where they contradict each other and where they, you know, get married well, you know, and that's how a privacy policy is written. Some of these bills would apply to larger businesses only. So for example, you know, they can say, a business is defined under this law as a business that makes $25 million or more. That's with some of the bills. However, other ones don't care about the size of your business. So you could be making, you know, $3 a year or $0 a year. You could have one employee or you could have 0 employees and they will still apply. So it's not just large businesses that need to pay attention to this. It's also smaller businesses that this can apply to. Now, some of the bills would allow consumers to sue businesses directly for violations as well. Now, if anyone's tracked the Accessibility Act, what's happened there is as lawyers were able to sue businesses directly for violations, we saw an explosion of lawsuits, and that's pretty much what we expect to see here as well. And the point of these is to provide consumers with certain privacy rights. So for example, the right to access the PII that you've collected about them, the right to ask you to delete the PII, the right to ask you to correct PII that is incorrect, things like that. So it's important to remember that these bills are meant to provide rights to consumers. The first right is the right to understand what's happening with their PII that they're giving to you, and then the rest of the rights come after that. Now, I know that there's probably some of you who are thinking, okay, you know, there's some privacy laws, there's some privacy bills coming, but, you know, maybe I'm not that worried about it. I'm just going to continue going the way that I've gone and roll the dice on the fines. I think it's important to note that there are other reasons for caring about privacy. So for example, consumer interest. There's a study by KPMG that said 84% of consumers said that they're open to new state privacy laws. As consumers become more and more interested in their privacy, they're going to push more privacy laws to be passed. And I think it's important to go down a very small rabbit hole, if I'm allowed, of consumer interest in privacy. So a lot of us have been around for, you know, a long time. And if you think about your website and if you think about the internet like 5 years ago, not many people really cared about privacy. right? It wasn't that big of a deal. You know, you had your healthcare attorneys, you had some privacy attorneys, and maybe you had some people in like tinfoil hats who cared about privacy at that time, but really it wasn't that big of a deal. But if you'll remember in 2018, the Cambridge Analytica scandal broke, where it was exposed that Cambridge Analytica basically harvested the PII of millions of Facebook consumers and used that PII for political advertising. And that's what's launched the privacy movement, at least in the United States. And during that scandal, a lot of consumers realized that they're sharing a lot more PII with companies than they realize, that those companies can take that PII and do whatever they want with it, share whoever they want to share it with, and there's really no consequences. And because of that, consumers started pressuring their state legislatures to propose and pass privacy laws. So that's where we see all of these privacy law proposals coming from, is basically it all got started with that scandal. So ever since 2018, more and more consumers are interested in their privacy. And caring about privacy can actually give you a competitive edge. So an Axios study said that 93% of Americans would switch to a company that prioritizes data privacy. That's a pretty large percentage, especially if you're thinking about small businesses. And then a study by Cisco found that privacy concerns can slow down the sales cycle by an average of 7.8 weeks, which is a very long time as well. And, you know, as Hans said, as people, we care about our own privacy, right? So if I purchase a ticket to an event, I don't want to receive a text message from, you know, whatever company they sold my phone number to the next day selling me products that I have absolutely no interest in. And that happens a lot. And I think that us as consumers ourselves can definitely agree that we don't want to have our privacy abused. And I think it's important to bring that to our own businesses as well, because people just don't like that. I mean, people know now when their PII has been sold or shared in ways that it should not have been shared. People hate spam, and you know, caring about privacy is really the right thing to do.
Yeah, and one last thing real quick. I'd love to think about privacy for those of you who've been in the web agency world or just been owning a website for years. I think of it a lot like SSL certificates. 5 years ago, SSL certificates were not that big of a deal. You needed them for e-commerce websites, but for everything else, it was just kind of like a nice add-on. You know, now when we visit a website that isn't secure, you know, you get a warning sign, you're told the website is not secure, you don't feel secure. And it's amazing how quickly time, you know, took place and just people's perspective on an SSL certificate has shifted. And I can't help but think about that analogy when thinking about privacy. Like right now, there's probably a lot of people that are saying, okay, these are two tinfoil hat people working in clearly a control room of some kind, thinking that privacy is the biggest deal ever. But, you know, speaking from experience, like I think with the trend in how privacy is getting more and more important, I think at some point in time, you have to ask yourself, like, what side of history do you want to be on? Do you want to be on the side that like proactively went out, got this all taken care of? Or do you want to be the reactive one who finds out you're not compliant 2 years from now, and because of a new bill that passed, someone is suing you? So you got to decide what side of history do you want to be on. And I think 5 years from now, we're going to look back at these days and say to ourselves, do you remember when companies used to just take your data and do whatever they want with it? Like, I really think that will be something we laugh about 5 years from now. So. All right, so the final part of this presentation is a little bit more geared towards people who build websites for other people. I saw an introduction. I saw some introductions. I saw that there's a web product designer I thought I saw. But in general, if you build websites for other people, I do want to talk to you a little bit about a role that you play in this conversation. When you build websites for clients, I feel very strongly that you should have a discussion about the importance of website policies for your clients. Now, me, before I, met my girlfriend, now wife, I used to copy and paste privacy policies for my clients. I'll be the first to admit that. And I certainly have found out I was not alone, back in the day doing that. But times have changed, as Donata has explained. And what I really try to teach agencies is that when you build websites for clients and you add contact forms, you install Google Analytics, whatever it is, whenever you're helping build the technologies that collect personal information for your clients, you may be forcing those clients to have to comply with multiple privacy laws. And to pretend that is not a big deal is just a misstep for your own business. When you try to make a decision for yourself, oh, my client is too small, or oh, they're a nonprofit, so they don't need a privacy policy, you're taking it on yourself that you know more than they do, and you're just going to disregard the conversation. And I would say, do the opposite. Have the discussion about the importance of privacy policies, because number one, it makes you look proactive and professional rather than reactive and unprepared. By having the discussion up front, you're preventing that future discussion where they get fined or sued and then they come back and say to you, what the heck? So, rather than trying to force clients to get a setup with a policy or downplaying it, just have some sort of piece of educational material where you tell them about the importance of website policies and have them sign like a waiver of some kind or something where they acknowledge that you told them about policies, and let them, the business owner, decide what they want to do for their own business. But don't be the person to make decisions for your clients when you may be the one forcing your client to comply with privacy laws.
Okay, so I have a question.
Yes.
Let's say I'm building a website for someone and I build it with a contact form. It's collecting names and emails, and I know that this website needs to have a privacy policy. What do I tell my client?
So,
like, how do I phrase it?
Yeah. So, all right. Well, not to be salesy, but I was put on the spot. This was not planned. Not to be salesy, but our company, Termageddon, we have a free website policies waiver that you can just hand over to your clients and sign. But in general, I think all you really need to say is, hey, look, I'm not a privacy law expert, but I do know that you're collecting personally identifiable information with your new website. And I think you should look into working with an attorney or using a privacy policy generator to help you add the necessary disclosures within a privacy policy for your business.
So you don't really need to, rattle off the name of every single privacy law and every single privacy bill. All you really need to say is, hey, look, we're building you this website. It's collecting PII, and I think you need to have a privacy policy, and that's something that you should look into. So you don't really need to be like, a privacy expert or a certified information privacy professional or a lawyer, to just give your client the heads up. Just the same as you would with like an SSL certificate. Like, hey, we need to make sure that your website is secure. You need to have an SSL certificate. And, the conversation can be simple. It doesn't have to be drawn out or complicated.
Yeah. And you can always fall back on, I'm not a privacy attorney. I just know this stuff is important. And that's perfectly fine. What's not fine is feeling uncomfortable. So therefore you never have a discussion about it. That's the unfortunate thing that I think a couple of years from now, agencies are going to get hit hard with that issue. But anyways, when discussing things like privacy policies and website policies, I don't know about you, but when I was running my agency, having knowledge about certain areas of what makes a website great really builds trust with a client by being able to point out ways you approach designing a site or ways you implement new technologies and features. So having a discussion about policies makes you look more well-rounded, and that can build client retention and loyalty. You can help stand yourself above the competition, because I think people who used to copy and paste privacy policies for their clients, that's a dying breed. I think the future will be for those who are being aware of these growing trends, not just in privacy, but accessibility and throughout. Last but not least, the reason why you should talk about privacy policies or website policies in general with your clients is so that you, the agency, can get documentation. It is up to the business to comply with privacy laws and decide what they want to do. It is not your job as a web agency owner. But what you need to do for your own agency is protect your own business and have that discussion with them so that you protect your business, give them the ability to make the best decision for themselves, and then move forward. Oh, wow. I think I said this almost verbatim. So we're going to go to the next page. Now, when do you discuss the importance of website policies with your clients? Well, you can do this when quoting new projects. That's a wonderful way to showcase that you are well-rounded, you have a good grasp of what makes a website great. When you're presenting a proposal to a client, you know, I always say compare yourself to, like, all else equal, one web agency presents a quote and discusses the importance of website policies. The other agency provides a quote, doesn't discuss the importance of website policies. Who would win? With all else equal, of course I would choose the business that has a grasp of policies. So it's a great time to just discuss, to showcase your well-roundedness and get the conversations going early about the importance of website policies. Now, before site launch, that is the second time where I would recommend having the discussion. So right before you launch the new beautiful website, to say, hey, just so you know, during this process, I helped you collect personally identify, or help build systems that collect personally identifiable information. I think you should look into getting a privacy policy added to your website.
Because the laws will start applying as soon as that website is collecting PII, which is usually when it's live.
Yeah.
So before our launch, you definitely want to make sure to have this all squared away.
Yep. And then if you have maintenance clients that you built websites for in the past, you know, there's no better time than now to reach out to them and say, hey, I've noticed some growing trends in privacy. In my space, I see privacy become a bigger and bigger deal. I think you need to look into getting a privacy policy. So those are 3 great reasons to have the discussion now rather than trying to avoid it for a later time. So, oh, go ahead.
Yeah. So lastly, you know, now that we talked about what privacy is and what privacy policies are and why they're important, you know, your last question is probably, where do I get one? So there's 2 places where you can get one. One is an attorney. So you wouldn't want to ask a divorce attorney or a family attorney to do this, but there are attorneys who focus on privacy. So privacy attorneys can write a privacy policy for your clients. This is a great option for really big clients that can afford it, or clients that need special compliance. So having an attorney draft a privacy policy is not cheap. So it might not be the most affordable solution for small businesses, but it is a good solution for people who need specialized compliance, such as HIPAA, if they're collecting like protected health information, or if they're targeting children, things like that. So privacy attorneys are a great option. Option 2 are generators. Generator is a software that will ask you a series of questions, and then we'll use your answers to create the privacy policy through the software. It's usually a faster and more cost-effective solution, and can work really well for the majority of your small business clients, and can be more affordable as well. I think we have some frequently asked questions that I put in here. We do presentations all the time, and you know, some of these come up. So maybe I'll just run through the answers to these real quick, or should we go to questions from the pool? Okay.
Yeah, let's go to questions to the pool, but any of those who are interested, who don't have a question to ask, but want to ask a question, feel free to read through these before I stop sharing our screen, so that you can ask this. If any of those interest you, be sure to add it to the questions, okay?
And also too, I'm one of those people that will watch a webinar and literally like 20 minutes after it's done, that's when I'll think of a question. So our contact information, we can put that in the chat, so that if you do think of a question afterwards, you can just send us an email.
Awesome. And that completes our presentation. So
hopefully there's someone still awake here.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a lot of questions out there, actually, if you want to go through the chat.
Everyone's gone. It's just blank screens.
Every time we do a video screen share, I get so concerned that after stopping sharing our screen and then we can see everyone again, that no one's there. Just everyone's gone.
That's Hans's like worst nightmare.
Yeah. All right. So, Michael, do you want to read them off, or do you want me to go through them?
Yeah. If you guys want to roll through them, you can. If you need me to help you find some people private message me them, so I'm posting them out there as I find those.
Okay. And there were a couple that were previously submitted. Do you want me to address those first?
I would start with what's in the chat, and then
Okay.
I can pull up that form just in case, unless you guys have it, and we can go through those after. But
If
yeah.
you want to add them in, that'd be great. Awesome.
Okay, sure. Yep.
Thank you. All right. Drew is a simple guy who loves Elementor. That's great.
All right, so we have a question from Shivam. Does GDPR apply to UK now? Great question. So as you know, the UK has left the European Union and the transition period ended on January 1st, 2021. There has been a treaty that was signed that allows for the free flow of PII between the European Union and the UK until an adequacy decision is reached, or within 6 months. So if there is no decision reached within 6 months, then that flow of PII will stop. However, what's really important to note is that the UK has a privacy law of its own, the UK Data Protection Act 2018. Now, without getting too political about it, the UK left the EU so that they could do things their own way. Well, Data Protection Act 2018 is essentially a carbon copy of GDPR with every instance of European Union changed to the United Kingdom. So if you are a business located in the UK, there are some minor changes that you need to make. Well, actually, regardless of where you're located, if you need to comply with GDPR or DPA 2018, there are some minor changes that you need to make to your privacy policy. So for example, when your privacy policy states the rights that are provided to individuals, you need to make sure that you're clarifying that residents of the EU and residents of the UK get those rights, because the UK is technically not a part of the EU anymore. So there are some minor changes that needed to be made. But other than that, people are relatively safe. If you're a UK business, you're relatively safe with your PII for a short period of time for now. So we'll see what happens.
All right. And the next question is, what are the Illinois privacy laws? By Jonathan Handler. There are no Illinois privacy laws that relate to disclosure requirements for private website privacy policies. However, there were some bills, right?
Yeah, so Illinois does not have a privacy law that protects people submitting their PII on a website. We have a very strong biometrics privacy law that has been the thorn in the side of many businesses. But if you're not collecting biometrics, Illinois residents don't really have privacy rights unless you are a student, unless your biometrics are being collected. But Illinois has proposed a few privacy laws. So we'll see what happens this year. I mean, we're kind of expecting to see a lot of privacy laws pass. So it'll be interesting to see, but it's definitely something that I'm tracking closely.
A lot of you might be sitting there thinking, well, you know, all right, sweet, there's no privacy laws in Illinois. I'm good to go. Let's move on. This meeting is now over. And I can't help but reiterate, you know, take accessibility and the lawsuits that have come out of like New York throughout the U.S. and the fact that just like accessibility, privacy laws protect the personal information of people of certain areas, and they are protecting them. They don't care where the business is located, and that is a critical piece to understanding the importance of needing to comply with possibly multiple privacy laws, is that privacy laws do not care about where your business is located. If you're collecting the personal information of people from that state, country, or continent, you may need to comply with their privacy laws.
All right, so the next question that I see is, what's the impact if we don't comply with them if we're not located there? So I'm gonna hope that this means if you're not located in that state. So if my business is located in Illinois, what happens if I don't comply with the California privacy law? Hopefully I'm understanding that question correctly, but if I'm not—
in the country, I meant.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
What's
In
up?
the country, I meant country, not.
Oh, if
state,
you're not
country.
located in the country.
Oh,
So let's
okay.
say you're located in the UK. What happens if you don't comply with like a California privacy law? That one's tricky, right? It depends. So you have to have sufficient contacts with a particular country to be able to be sued or fined there. So, you know, having a customer there could be considered sufficient contacts. Doing business there could be considered sufficient contacts. So the risk is really the risk of being fined or sued. So foreign governments can still issue fines even if you're not located in a particular area. So I would say the main risk would be getting fined.
And I think, another factor is like, I assume, Shivam, you did not mean this the way I'm going to word it, but a lot of times people will go through the Q&A session and ask us questions where it seems like they're trying their hardest not to comply with privacy laws. And once and if we go down that path, you'll find yourself ultimately coming to the conclusion of maybe it's just easier to just take the time to just get compliant and move on in life. And because one person was telling me well, how about I just get rid of all my contact forms and remove all my website analytics tools? I'm like, well, yeah, then maybe you don't need a website privacy policy, but you've shot your entire website in the foot. You've taken out all the potential that what makes a website great in terms of generating more business and interest and inquiries. So yeah, in one breath, you're right. You don't have to comply with privacy laws. You just also kind of screwed yourself over a little bit. So I would just say keep that in mind too when thinking through this stuff.
Yeah. So my main concern with that is that there's so many countries out there or states around the world, right? So and there are going to be so many different privacy policy around the world. Like some country or state is getting their own privacy policy around the world. So it's really hard to meet all of them, comply with all of them. So that is my main concern because you will be leaving out one privacy policy or another of some country or state around the world.
So it's almost impossible to comply with every single law that could ever apply to you, right? So a good example that I can give you, I'm the team lead for the privacy compliance team of Joomla. And Joomla has users from all over the world. So when trying to figure out what privacy laws we wanted to comply with, what we did is we looked at the number of users that visit our website from each country. So for example, we had one user from Uganda in the last 10 years. There comes a time where you have to do a risk analysis, whether it's worth it for you to spend hours and hours and hours and days to comply with a privacy law for one person, where it's very unlikely that that privacy law will ever be enforced in the first place. So if you're worried about that, what I would do is I would look at your PII that you're collecting, and I would look at where those users are coming from. I would look at your analytics and see where those users are coming from. Now, when it comes to privacy laws in the United States, UK, Canada, EU, I would make sure that I would comply with those because those are very highly enforced laws. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of enforcement cases and fines each year. But if you have one user from some random country where the privacy law is never enforced, you have to make that decision yourself whether or not you want to comply with it. It's impossible for a business to comply with everything that could potentially apply to you. I mean, at that point, you're going to wear hazmat suits to throw out paper clips. You have to be practical about it. So it's a decision that you have to make yourself as to what you want to comply with. And it's just a risk analysis, basically.
Awesome. Now, next question, Maureen Roberts asks a great one. Is there a one-size-fits-all privacy policy, the silver bullet to all problems?
It's like the sisterhood of the traveling pants. You will never find a pair of jeans that fit everyone.
Yeah, that is the one thing I hate to say. I am not aware of a single template in all of the internet that is actually providing the compliance necessary to be the one-size-fit-all. And I like to really give an example with this. The California Consumer Privacy Act, which a lot of people have made a really big deal about, even though it applies to businesses that make over $25 million in annual revenue, process the data of 50,000 or more California consumer households devices, or sells the personal information, or
derives 50% or more of its annual revenue from selling the PII of California consumers.
Yeah, so if you actually said yes to one of those three items, and you do business in California, and you have a retail business in California, you may have to provide a toll-free telephone number for your users to opt out of your data being collected. And that's a really good example of just how unique some of these privacy laws become when you fit a certain mold that they're looking for, and then they require you to do these special things. So if there was a one-size-fits-all, although it's fundamentally impossible, assuming there was, you would have to provide a lot of information like toll-free telephone numbers and a whole bunch of more things that wouldn't even really apply to your business. And I think it all comes back down to like each and every one of these privacy laws is trying their best at protecting the personal information of their residents, and they're just trying to give companies the ability to properly disclose to their users, this is what we do with your data, and this is, this is everything that's done, and these are your rights. So there isn't a one-size-fits-all. What a business really has to, a business, nonprofit, or just a website owner in general needs to do is they need to figure out what privacy laws apply to them, and then provide the disclosures that are required under those specific laws.
Yeah, so when you write a privacy policy or when you create a privacy policy or whatever, the very first thing that you start with is a list of privacy laws and who those privacy laws apply to. And then you go down the line. So for example, CalOPA, do you collect the PII of California residents? Yes or no? If that's yes, that's the law applies. And then you look at the law and you read it, and then you see what privacy policy disclosures that law requires. And that's how you build the privacy policy. You take all the laws that apply to you, you take all of the disclosures that those laws require, and that's how you combine a privacy policy. And that's why one-size-fits-all privacy policy is essentially impossible, because privacy laws don't just apply to every single business out there, regardless of what they do. There are specific requirements that you need to meet to have that privacy law apply to you. So, and if you were to say, okay, well, let's combine all of these together and take all of those disclosures and have one like super monster privacy policy, the issue with that is that privacy laws provide certain privacy rights. So, if somebody asks you to delete their PII that you have collected about them, number one, that's a pretty big loss to your business, right? You can no longer market to them. You can no longer sell to them. Number two, it's a pretty big operational cost. If you think about where you keep all of your PII in all of the different places, having to delete it from all of those places takes a lot of time. So if you have a privacy policy that complies with all of the privacy laws, you're going to be subject to a lot more obligations than you want to be or than you need to be.
I'm going to add one more thing too. Maureen, great question because you got us going here. We talked about how, I'm guessing if you're listening to this, you're going to be sitting there being like, well, how am I supposed to find out what privacy laws apply to me? At least that's what I'm sitting here kind of thinking. I wonder if they're thinking the same thing. So to answer that ahead of time, we mentioned that to get a privacy policy, you can reach out to attorneys that clearly have a focus on privacy law compliance. I cannot tell you how many times we have come across people who paid an attorney who drafted a great privacy policy for a specific privacy law, but did not address the 6 other markets that they're servicing and the privacy laws that impact theirs. So when you speak to attorneys, ask them, what privacy laws do you monitor? What is your strategy as a law firm to keep, or how are you monitoring existing privacy bills, and what are you going to do when things are amended? Make sure that the attorney has a strategy to not only generating a comprehensive privacy policy for your actual business, but they have a strategy to keep it up to date over time. Now, the second thing was that we talked about how you can use a website policies generator, which are throughout the, there's many of them. Termageddon, full disclosure, is one of them. And I think the best way to select a great generator is to find a generator that actually helps you figure out what privacy laws you need to comply with. Because asking the question, do you want to have CCPA disclosures, is not appropriate, because you don't know if you need CCPA disclosures. So find a generator that helps you figure out what privacy laws actually may apply to you, and have that generator ask the remaining questions that are needed to provide the specific disclosures based on the privacy laws you actually need to comply with.
Yeah, so Charles asked, how do you know you have the right policy? So the first thing that you should ask yourself is, where did you get that policy from? Did you get that policy from a template that you found online? Did you get that policy from your competitor's website? If either one of those apply, it's probably not right. And because, again, it all comes back to what privacy laws apply to you. If you take your competitor's privacy policy, they might have completely different privacy laws that apply to them. They might have completely different obligations, and their privacy policy might not have been updated in a while. And it might not be compliant with the current privacy laws that are in place. So if you look at your policy, look at the last time that you updated your policy. If the last time that the policy was updated was a year ago, if the last time it was updated was 2 years ago, it is probably out of date, and you probably need to update it with the new legislation that has come out. So like a great example is a question that was asked here. What happens with the UK now that it's left the European Union? If you are subject to those privacy laws and you haven't updated for Brexit, that policy is out of date, right? So you want to make sure that whoever wrote it is a reputable person, that you know who they are. You want to make sure that whoever wrote it is an attorney or somebody with a strong legal background in privacy. Because if they're not, if you had your cousin write it and they're not a privacy attorney, it's probably not good. And then you want to see what privacy laws apply to you and what disclosures those privacy laws require. So if you go onto our blog, termageddon.com, you can search for what privacy laws apply to you. That's a blog post that we have that will help you determine what privacy laws apply. And then there's another blog post that says what a privacy policy needs to include. And that's broken down by each law. So you can easily see, all right, GDPR applies to me. Here are the disclosures that GDPR requires, and then you can match that up with your privacy policy to see if it has all of the disclosures that that law requires. So I would look at those two documents, and then I would look at your privacy policy, and I would just basically go down the line and see, does it have all the disclosures that it needs to have? And then lastly, you should make sure that your privacy policy is accurate to your actual practices. So if you're collecting names and emails, but your privacy policy says that you're collecting only names, that privacy policy isn't right to you. So you need to make sure that it's accurate as to what's actually happening on your website too.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, that's great. Let's say you've ticked all the boxes and you've done a good faith here in Illinois or on the East Coast, but you have a client that in California. How do you protect yourself if you have to constantly be juggling these privacy policies from every state, from every community?
Yeah.
How do you protect yourself?
Yeah, I mean,
And your clients.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's actually one of the major reasons why we created Termageddon. Like, I think it's kind of a joke that small business owners have to stay up to date with a multitude of privacy laws just to run their business. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love that people have a right to their privacy. I just hate the fact that every state's doing their own unique thing. And that was the motivation for why we created Termageddon. So what I can say is that, if you don't feel like you're going to have the time or energy or resources to devote yourself to, or a staff member of your company to monitoring privacy laws, I would say partner up with a great attorney that knows it in and out, or work with a generator, which I see is actually your next question. Which, you asked, what generator do you recommend? I'm sorry, we're a little bit biased because we run Termageddon together. So I would recommend Termageddon. We are the only generator, I believe, that actually covers all privacy laws in the US. A couple of our competitors like to think they do, but have failed to acknowledge at least 2 privacy laws that we're aware of. And we seem to be the only generator that's actually monitoring the privacy bills in the US and world for that matter. So I like Termageddon. If you need multiple languages, that is one thing that we're weak on. So I'll try to point out some weaknesses about us. We only do English for now. But yeah, I have to say it. And also transparent pricing. It's $10 a month or $99 a year. We also have a web design partner program where web designers can resell or use our affiliate program. But yeah, Termageddon's the best.
Yeah, I thank you very much. That's you did exactly what you told me exactly what I needed to know.
Cool.
I'm starting these directories and
Okay,
I
good.
need a lot of this. Thanks.
Cool. Cool.
Awesome.
Steve's got my favorite message ever with "You guys are on fire." Thank you, Steve. I'm super nervous whenever I do these calls. In fact, Donata had to write down "talk slower" right when I started because I think I just went like
you just go way too fast. Like I can't even follow what you're saying. Like you should be a rapper. Just rap about privacy laws, just super fast.
I like that. Like a
Please
YouTube
don't
privacy
actually,
rapper.
Then I'm gonna have to listen to that. Oh, that's like the last thing I need in my life right now.
Okay, so Fred asks, what do small, independent, not-for-profit website owners need to do to protect themselves besides just pull the plug and go dark? Good question.
When it comes to nonprofits, it's actually interesting because less privacy laws apply to not-for-profit organizations than for-profit organizations. So if you're a not-for-profit, the laws that you need to worry about are Europe's General Data Protection Regulation and UK's Data Protection Act 2018. So those are the 2 that you need to actually pay attention to right now. As more bills pass, it's likely that more laws will start applying to not-for-profits, but that's the case right now.
Isn't California on that list too?
Nope. It's only if you're operating for profit in California. Okay. Yeah. But essentially what I would recommend to not-for-profit businesses is, make sure that you have an accurate and up-to-date privacy policy. That would be my main recommendation for you. And if somebody contacts you to exercise their privacy rights, make sure that you respond, make sure that you honor their privacy rights and things like that. Not-for-profits are generally at a smaller risk than for-profit businesses, but you still need to have a privacy policy and to make sure that you keep it up to date. But the requirements are slightly smaller.
Awesome. Now, Fred also asks, is there a reputable independent provider of PII policy generators? So I'm pretty sure, is there a reputable privacy policy generator out there? I feel bad, but Termageddon is the best. But obviously that seems a little bit biased. Do your own research. And here's what I would also suggest. Take a look at all website policy generators. And more than anything, look at the team page. Look at the backgrounds of like where people come from. Because the fact is as much as a price matters, obviously price matters to everyone, but like you're talking about the privacy policy that's representing your website and trying to do quite a bit for your website. Take a look at who's behind the scenes making this stuff happen and like what are their goals in life. Because I personally would not trust my company's privacy policy to a group of web designers. I wouldn't, and I hope that I mean that with the most respect. I would trust web designers with my website, but not for my privacy policy. So just do your own research, look at the backgrounds of people. I think that's something a lot of people miss. Also, if you haven't learned this fact already, this is a note for all. When someone says something is free, it's never free. If you are getting the product for free, that means you are the product. If it says for free, but then you find out you've been upsold like $400 a year or something like that, you got to figure out, what company seems trustworthy and you can build a relationship with for the long term.
Yeah, so I would look at the last time that they have updated their policies. Usually you can see that on like the social media pages. When's the last time they talked about an update? When's the last time they talked about a new proposed bill? when's the last time they talked about an amendment to a current law? So for example, the California Consumer Privacy Act, when it passed, the Attorney General of California was responsible for coming out with regulations, interpreting the law, and saying what privacy policies need to disclose and what the rules are and all of that. So in the last year, those regulations have been updated 4 times. So check and see whether or not those privacy policies have been updated 4 times in the last year. Another great thing to look out for is whether they talk about cases or enforcement actions, and making sure that they have a privacy bill tracker. So are they actually tracking the privacy bills that have been proposed in the United States, or are they talking about privacy bills that have been proposed outside of the United States as well? Like Canada has proposed a new privacy bill. Have they talked about that? So it's basically just, quick things that you can check for. And then also, if you're using a free privacy policy generator, and let's say you do want to go that route, and you start answering the questions, and it asks you, are you a business or a person? And you say, I'm a business, and in little brackets it says that's going to be an extra $40. Keep that in mind, because some companies will charge based on what privacy laws you need to comply with. So if you need GDPR compliance, that will be extra. If you need Canada compliance, that will be extra. So you might end up with a significantly higher bill than what you thought it was. So make sure to look at the pricing page. Make sure to see who's behind the product and how up to date the product is as well. Okay, if I'm using Google Forms for my website to collect data, do I have to put that on my website privacy policy? Yes, you do, because it is a form that is collecting PII, and that PII is being shared with Google, so you do need to have a privacy policy there. Yes.
And you need to say that you share it too, that data.
Yes. Now, okay, Jeffrey. Even with a privacy policy, will a site be liable for inadequate disclosure? Yes. So if you have a privacy policy that does not comply with the privacy laws that apply to you, you would still be liable for inadequate disclosures. That's why it's really important to figure out what privacy laws apply to you. And that's why it's really important to use a reputable source for your privacy policy. Because if you, let's say California's law requires you to make 5 disclosures, but you make 3, that's still a violation, and that's still a fine, regardless of the fact that you had a privacy policy or that you made a best effort to have one.
All right. And the next question is from Oscar. Before I jump into it, I just want to note Oscar is the name of my best friend of all time, going all the way back to junior high school. So I already like this guy. Oscar asks, WordPress has a generic privacy policy page that can automatically be generated. Are there any specific changes that should be made to it in order to comply with US and eventually the rest of the world regulations?
Yes, rewrite it all.
All right. Let's take a step back and let's talk about that. So WordPress deployed, I think it was 5.1. I could be very wrong with that, but they recently deployed a privacy policy template to help people, get going with getting their privacy policies generated. And if those of you who are a part of the Slack group for the WordPress contributors, you will see that, obviously the people who contribute to WordPress are amazing people, and this open source movement is one of the most important things I think we need in this world. But, one thing to note is that the people who helped build the privacy policy template were never intending for this privacy policy to comply with any particular privacy law. And that's an important thing to understand, is that they made this template to raise awareness of the importance of website policies. It was never intended to be a compliance document. And you can actually go to Slack and even talk to the people who were behind this and even ask them straight up. And they'll tell you that this was just more as a guiding tool than an actual compliant document. So unfortunately, we're not aware of WordPress's default privacy policy being compliant with any privacy law, but we certainly appreciate the fact that they've raised awareness of the importance of privacy law compliance.
Yeah, and then tonight, if you're having a hard time sleeping, I have written a blog post that analyzes the privacy policy and talks about various privacy laws and various disclosures and you know how those disclosures aren't met. So if you're having a hard time falling asleep tonight, you know, check out that article. It'll tell you everything you need to know about WordPress's privacy policy.
It's actually a rock star article. And if anyone wants to just do a search in our blog and type in WordPress,
yeah,
it's one of our more recent blogs. Maybe you can pop it into the chat.
Yeah.
That'd be cool. All right, so from Fred. Does an individual who is using a third-party provider site to connect with a community who has responsibility for the responsibility for the privacy policy, the larger hosting entity of the individuals who use the sites provided by the larger hosting provider? Okay. So it sounds like Fred is discussing the fact that some businesses have models where it's like, hey, through our platform, you can build your own like microsite or your own branded version of our site, but we control the data. We lease out the rights for you to use all of this stuff. And
Fred, if that's not what you're talking about, let us know.
yeah, good call. Yeah,
Because we might be completely misinterpreting that question.
Yeah, that's kind of, yeah, I might have completely missed that. Good point. But if that is where you're going, that would depend on what agreement you have between you and that major mega vendor who's issuing this micro policy. It seems to always depend on the contract, because the general rule of thumb is who owns the website. That's the person responsible for privacy law compliance. But with these licensing things, it can sometimes get a little tricky, unless you feel differently.
No, I agree with that. I think you should definitely check your contract. And unrelated to this, sort of, but anybody here who builds websites, I've seen a lot of website design contracts in my day. I actually used to represent web designer freelancers and agencies in a previous life. And what you really need to do, and I was shocked by this, but you really need to make sure that you check your contract to make sure that your contract does not say that you're responsible for compliance. There are contracts floating around in the template space that say that web designer will be responsible for compliance with all applicable laws, rules, and regulations. Don't do that. That is extremely dangerous, and you know it could really put you out of business. Make sure that your contract doesn't include a clause like that. Make sure that you're not providing any warranties. Make sure that you protect yourself. So that's my tip of the day. Slightly not related to privacy, but still important. Okay, right. Susan, where should a privacy policy be detailed and located on their site? Are there accessibility, visibility guidelines to be aware of? What are the best practices? I love this question because it's something that I harp on all the time. And most people don't care. But so what's really important about a privacy policy is that it is conspicuously located on your website. Don't ask Hans to define what conspicuous means because he thinks that...
I don't know words that well. That's her job, you know, and conspicuous. I thought that meant like hiding, like, you know, you're hiding behind the scenes.
No.
It's the exact opposite.
Yeah, so it needs to be very apparent and very visible. So when you look at your website, you can put it in the footer. So let's say your footer is gray. The link to the privacy policy cannot be a slightly lighter shade of gray. It needs to be obvious. So if your footer is white, your link to the privacy policy needs to be black. It needs to be very obvious that this is what the privacy policy is. This is where you find it. So make sure that the colors are contrasting. You know, obviously check for accessibility there. You probably would want to use larger font than the surrounding text. So usually in that area, you'll have like the copyright bar, you'll have the terms of service link, you'll have your address. It's a good practice to have the privacy policy appear at least slightly larger than the information surrounding it. And you might want to use different font to kind of really make it pop out. So you need to make sure that it's visible. Do not combine a privacy policy with any other pages and call it legal. Most privacy laws will require you to literally state privacy policy. So it cannot be a privacy policy and a terms of service, because if you combine everything on one page, that's going to be confusing to a consumer And then you also cannot show that you received consent for the privacy policy either, because you combined it with other things. So have the privacy policy be on its own page, have the terms of service or other policies be on another page. Don't name it legal notices or legal information, name it privacy policy. And lastly, you might want to, depending on what privacy laws apply to you, you should just get that like emblazoned on a t-shirt or something. But
it depends.
yeah, you might also need to get consent when you're collecting PII. Regardless of whether you actually need to get it by law, it's a good practice to get it anyway. So on your forms, if you remember the form that we showed you at the bottom, it had a little checkbox. It says, I agree to the privacy policy. Don't pre-check any boxes. The consumer should be able to make a choice themselves, and don't allow them to submit the form until they have checked the box. And make sure that the privacy policy is linked to the privacy policy. Make sure that the privacy policy is not hidden behind a bunch of pages and a bunch of things that a consumer needs to click on. And make sure that you have it on every single page in the footer. So those are really the main points to keep in mind when you're thinking about design and what your privacy policy looks like and where it's located on the site.
Awesome. Steve is next. I am, and my main clients are operating for profit in California. So your basic recommendation is sign up for the Termageddon service. No, that's not my basic recommendation. That's my basic wish. Of course, that's what I wish will happen. But really, my basic recommendation for you as a web agency owner, Steve, is to get it documented that you discuss the importance of website policies with your clients, because you can't control what the client wants to do, but you can control limiting your liability as a business owner.
I'm going to do it though. I'm going to do it though. Like I'm doing it already. I'm signing up for it right now. And they don't know. Like my clients, I have a different kind of deal. They pay me monthly, forever, perpetuity, you know, and I just handle. I mean, I'm the guy that's breaking the rules, doing everything, you know. Like I basically am in charge, you know. Like I put their name is in charge, but really, you know, they're the author of everything written on the page and everything, but they're really not.
Got
right?
it.
So I'm doing it, and I'm on the create account page right now of your website. I'm doing it. I'm going to do it. So
Awesome.
the basic recommendation, well, I mean, I like working with people that I have some kind of knowledge of, right? It's much easier to deal with your generator than some of the other ones. And I have used the free one that did cost me $99 before.
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah.
I totally understand. So I mean, so the basic recommendation is if I do this, right, and no matter where, as long as I come back to my account every time and pay an individual I almost said subscription price for each of the sites that I build, I'm good, right? Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
So yeah, Steve, so when you register, give me till tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, I'll issue you the free license, and then we'll send you the welcome email, which will give you information on how the system works and how to set up your own policies and how to resell it to your clients.
Okay, so but still register, right? I mean, I put Chicago Elementor meetup presentation, you know, January today, 13th and stuff, and then hit register and then don't do anything. Is that what you're telling me?
That's correct, because I process the registrations manually, because I have to manually issue like free license and agency.
Oh, okay. Well, then you'll see. You'll know it's me.
I'll do that tomorrow morning, so don't touch anything till then.
And actually, let's make that as a rule of thumb, because this has turned into a sales pitch for Termageddon, which can sometimes happen during these Q&As. So let me say this: for anyone who is interested in Termageddon, register. Don't purchase anything, and we'll figure out something between now and tomorrow to hook you up with something nice. Because I assure you, these educational things quickly can kind of divulge into how great and awesome Termageddon is, and that's not our intentions. Our intention is to discuss reality, which is not enough people are aware of what is about to happen in the U.S. with privacy laws, and that's literally what we want to focus on.
But the reality is none of us are lawyers, right? We're web developers, right? So like the reality is how the hell are we going to get this done? I mean, you can go to the lawyer and spend a couple grand for 2 hours or 3 hours or 4 hours of the guy's time if you're lucky. But you guys she is. Right. And you're the house husband and, obviously know something about developing websites because you ran an agency. That's probably how you met. And so the deal is like, what the hell else are we going to do? Right. I mean, and most people, I mean, the sales is built on who you know. So, I mean, like, what the hell this is supposed to be a sales pitch. I thought it was going to be a sales pitch. So like, I'm here for the sales pitch. And so you told me.
Well, for those of you who didn't come for a sales pitch, I know many privacy attorneys, and if you'd like to get connected with some privacy attorneys, I'd be more than happy to introduce you.
Their hourly price is going to be 3 times more than yours is for the year, though. Like,
Probably, but yeah.
Probably it is. That's what it is. So this is good. I'm done.
Well,
I'm
if
doing.
you
I'm
want
doing
to spend that stimulus check, you know.
Yeah.
it. I'm not trying to spend anything, but I mean, this is my best option, right? If I do the other one, it's $100 every time I do it, and I gotta know when I'm supposed to update it, right? So I mean, I'm not trying to like be crazy or overly energetic.
No.
I always am. I'm just trying to say, like, seriously, what are my, the other options? Use a generator, right? That's what you said in the beginning before you even mentioned Termageddon. So I'm just asking you, if I'm going to use a generator, my 2 choices: get a lawyer. It says I don't have any friends, and I know a lot of lawyers, but I don't have any of them that are in the privacy policy area, right? I'm in Southern California. Lawyers are expensive here. So I mean, a real estate lawyer's $300 an hour. Right.
Wow.
So you're talking about crazy stuff. This is like contract law, right? So these people are not cheap. Right. So I mean, that's why, I mean, they don't have to, there's not that many of them, not like divorce attorneys, or, you're not going to get a public defender. Right. So what are we going to do here? The options are get a generator. This is going to be the cheapest route.
Well, your support is obviously greatly appreciated. Like, it really is. It means a lot to us because, like, we're sitting here trying to diverge it to like a non-sales conversation. But the fact is, it's greatly appreciated that you feel this way. I mean, it's the reason why we built Termageddon. So.
Well, yeah, and the problem is you don't come up on the first page if you're right. If you type in,
we're on page 2. Yeah, we're coming for page 1, but we're on page 2 right now. Yeah.
Okay, because like it says California, you weren't there, right? And it was the same ones that I've used before. So just on a whim, So just on a whim, I went to the one that I used before to see, because it says free, and that's why it attracted me, to see if those little brackets next to the thing were there, right? She's absolutely 100% right. Once I got through the first page, after I said I was a company, didn't say anything about charging me any money there. But once I said California, once I said, blah, 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 next thing you know, and next thing you know, there was one in there for like $29.99. That was an extra add-on, right? And I knew that this was the exact one I used, back, like maybe 5 years ago or something like that. That actually was the damn one that was going to end up being $99.
So I know the one you're talking about, and I'll tell you that it's being recorded, it's being monitored here. But I used to use them, and I was dating a privacy attorney at the time, and the straw that broke the camel's back was, do you want disclosures for mobile protection? Yeah. That's not a thing, and they charged you for it. Like, what is mobile protection?
Yeah, that's like a $9.
Like a cover for my phone? Like, what is
that's the thing, right?
Free phone
like,
so I was doing it, right? Because it's been a few years since I updated. I just rededesigned this one. My main client and my main thing is bartending schools, right? So like I have one big bartending school right now, but I've touched every other one of them in Southern California, mainly to put them out of business so my one guy could keep going. But anyway, the deal is I've got this guy, and everybody, like everybody, we're suffering, right? The businesses are suffering because of this COVID crap, and it's a go-to school, so you have to, it's a big problem. So I don't want them to lose any kind of money. $2,500 is too much for anybody to spend on a stupid penalty, especially people that have been sitting in this meeting. When, I mean, if you think about $2,500 for one violation, that buys you 25 websites for 1 year, right? So for 25 websites, I could spend $2,500 and have this stuff done, right? Now I have some clients in Asia and stuff that don't apply to this crap. They don't care. It's in Thailand. Like they don't have any privacy laws. They're a damn communist country, right? So it doesn't really matter. I mean, they got a king. But anyway, the deal is what do we got? So I got it. This honestly, that was my recommendation is so that's the recommendation, right? Use a generator. And now that you know something about the guys that own Termageddon, use Termageddon, correct?
Yeah, I mean, that's great. And Steve, like, I'm looking super forward because I can already tell you and I are going to be talking tomorrow. So like, let's
gonna have to schedule
we'll have a call tomorrow. I'm excited to carry this conversation.
All right, bud. I'm down. Okay.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Steve. I know there's a few other questions. I do also have some on the Google Forms. So if you guys want to finish these up, and some of them were kind of answered from Google Forms, so I'll bypass those. But go ahead, and I think there's a few more in the chat.
And for those of you who might get busy or busy with other things, I'm just going to email everyone again. I'm going to add to the chat our emails. We are real humans that like to talk to people. So here are our emails.
Okay, so I'll start. Maureen Roberts asked, Oh, now we're like all
Sorry,
the way in
I'll
the
find
wrong
it. I'll
place
find it.
now.
I'll find it. 740 was where we're at. Yes.
Okay, so if your business is B2B
Oh,
or privacy,
Charles. We missed Charles.
Okay, Charles, do political parties have to comply? Yes, and also political parties have some special privacy laws that apply to them as well. Maureen, if your business is B2B, are privacy policies needed? Yes, because a lot of business people will still submit forms with their personal emails or will use their business emails for personal business. So, you know, that's something to keep in mind. And then how does the Termageddon privacy policy actually work? So when you answer all of the questionnaires and click submit, you will get the text of the privacy policy itself, and then you'll also get an embed code. And that embed code goes onto the privacy policy page, and that's the way that the privacy policy is displayed. And the embed code is what allows us to update the policy whenever the laws change as well. Okay. Steve, inconspicuous is what you previously thought was conspicuous.
I wish I was better with words.
Okay. Durv said, I use WP Auto Terms plugin to generate privacy policy page and terms and conditions page for my website. Okay. And okay, how are the updates being handled with Termageddon? So I keep track of privacy bills. I also keep track of current privacy laws, regulations, rules, cases, all of that. So let's say that there is some type of a change. Changes can be of two different types. So change of one type just changes the current wording of the policy itself. So I just need to adjust the wording, right? So essentially at that point, I go into our system and then I make the change, and then through the embed code, the policy updates on your site. So you don't have to touch anything. We send you an email letting you know what has been changed.
What will be changed.
Yes. Yeah. And the other type of update is, let's say there's a new privacy law that has passed that has a disclosure that I can't answer for you. So, for example, let's say the disclosure that is required is, do you sell the PII that you collect? Obviously, I wouldn't know the answer to that because I don't know your business. So at that point, we send you an email, you respond yes or no, or click a button, and then the policy is automatically updated again through that embed code right onto your website. The one snag that we could potentially hit in that case, so one of the features of Termageddon is that we allow you to change any of the text of the policy. So let's say you decide you didn't like what I wrote and you want to change the wording of a particular sentence. We allow you to change any of the language that you want. However, because you are making a customized change, I won't override that change in the future because I don't want to just delete what you wrote. So at that point, what I will do is, if that section needs to be changed because of a new law, rule, regulation, change, whatever, I will send you an email letting you know, hey, here's the change, here's my proposed new language, and then you can decide whether or not you want to keep the language that you originally wrote, or if you want to accept the new language that I am proposing. If you want to accept the new language that I'm proposing, all you do is click accept, and then the policy changes automatically on your website, again, through the embed code. So that's really how the updates work. We will always send you a notice when an update is made or is proposed to be made. We'll let you know why we're doing the update and what law is requiring that or what change is requiring that. So you're always in the know. We never just make updates without letting you know. But yeah, that's basically how that works.
Yeah, and Susan Rocco and Rachel Winchester both introduced themselves earlier today. Susan has worked with legal in corporate setting, and Rachel has 3 clients who are attorneys and law professors. So Donata just spoke about how each and every one of our policies can be customized to whatever wording you would like. And I think that's a major reason why law firms are one of our biggest client bases. So Susan and Rachel, if you're interested, both the policies or all sets of our policies that we offer are customizable That's a feature attorneys love, although we don't see them often customizing our policies too much. I think they like what we offer out of the gate.
Fred Hastings asks, does Termageddon provide any indemnification?
That was a direct message to me. So
Oh,
let's go up one to Steve. Do you provide cookie policy generators? So we provide a cookie disclosure that is we provide a cookie disclosure that is disclosures for certain privacy laws. But depending on how you answer the questionnaire to figure out what privacy laws you need to comply with, you may have to add an additional separate cookie declaration page and even have that dreaded non-essential cookie consent pop-up. So our tool helps you figure out if you actually need that, and then we give you a little notice and provide you links to cookie consent tools that we actually like that are actually compliant with privacy laws. So cookiebot.com, for example, it's a tool we love. It's free for websites up to 100 pages. So our tool helps figure out if you actually need it. And if you do, we guide you to the right resources, several of them being free. So Fred, you sent me a private message. If you want to send that to everyone, great. Otherwise, if you wouldn't mind, email me and I would be happy to answer that privately.
or you can just respond to him privately right through the
Oh,
chat.
or I can respond privately, yeah, but I'm running so quick here. All right, Mike, did you say you have some additional questions for us?
Yeah, there are some additional ones here from the Google form, and I actually have one as well. I'm going to selfishly ask first. So I work with somebody that they have subdomains. They have a main website for the company, and then I run their university site where we teach the software. Do I need a different privacy policy for each of those sites, or can I use a sort of the same one for those?
Yeah, so I actually answered this question in like a web designer Facebook group literally this morning. So I'm like really fresh up on this question, which is kind of funny.
Cool.
But the point of privacy policies is that they're clear and not confusing to consumers, right? So let's say your main domain is collecting names, emails, and phone numbers, and you use that information to send marketing messages and you don't sell that information. The subdomain, let's say, collects physical addresses, credit card numbers, and credit card expiration dates, and you do sell that information. If you were to combine both of those together, that'd be really confusing to the consumer, right? Because if I'm on the domain, you don't sell my PII. If I'm on the subdomain, you do. So it's unclear whether my PII is going to be sold. And then it's just confusing to the consumer to try to figure out where they're at. So in that case, I would recommend having two separate policies. So one policy for the domain and another policy for the subdomain. However, the way that it usually works with subdomains, at least from what I've seen, usually it's operated by the same company. So usually the privacy practices are pretty much the same. The same PII is collected. They share it with the same people. So if everything's the same in terms of privacy on the domain and the subdomain, there should be no issue with combining the two because it wouldn't be confusing to the consumer. So the question to ask would be on a case-by-case basis. Would this be confusing as to what my privacy rights are for the domain and the subdomain? If it would be confusing, you have two separate policies. If it would not be confusing, you can have one.
Okay, so on the subdomain, the only form that's on there is to like sign up for the newsletter, and I can almost even take that off because it's really just focused on the users of the software that use it. So it's not really a public website in a sense. I don't even have it indexed. I have it. I don't need it to be because the users that use the software, they know what it is and they know how to get there. And that's if they don't use the software, then the site is essentially useless to them. So. Yeah.
Yeah, you just want to make sure that it's not confusing, and you want to make sure that, you know, if you use one privacy policy, you want to make sure that the subdomain lists that privacy policy in the footer too.
Got it. Cool.
Because if somebody can get to the subdomain without going to the regular domain, then they might never see the privacy policy if that privacy policy is not posted on the subdomain. So you want to make sure it's posted on both sides.
Okay.
And Mike, one other thing, and I offer this to everyone, if you have a website with subdomains and it turns out you do need multiple licenses, just give us a holler. We'll hook you up with some free ones. If you buy one and you have a bunch of subdomains, like just reach out. We'll get you the free ones if you actually need them in the first place.
Yeah,
So
because I
just
did
know
buy
that.
I did buy your guys's for them for the main website. I just rebuilt it for them, so
Oh,
I
cool.
will reach out for sure. Yeah, because
Yeah, please do. Yeah. And for everyone listening, if you have multiple websites or multiple subdomains, just give me a holler. I'll hook you up.
Cool. All right. So from the list here, are there services or plugins that help setting up privacy policies in terms of service? Yes, Termageddon. Go get yourself some Termageddon.
And there's many other generators out there. So
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So how often do you consult with law firms to write a privacy policy? I have only done this once for a client with a medium-sized site, and I'm trying to anticipate when to suggest this for future clients. As a freelancer, I like to give an honest quote from the beginning.
So as a non-attorney who's hired multiple attorneys, maybe I could speak on this because I'm kind of coming from the
Well, I
client
think
perspective.
there's two sides to this question. Like, how often do we consult with attorneys for our generator? So we have a lot of attorneys using our product. So we do end up, getting their feedback and their thoughts on it. I consult with data protection authorities way more than probably necessary. So I'll be often making calls and asking them random questions about very specific portions of the law. So our product has been reviewed by attorneys yeah.
So,
But I guess from their perspective, like how often should they consult with an attorney?
Oh,
Maybe
that's
you
a
can
good one.
take that one.
But before I want to note that, that is something that's weird for me as of late. Like, I'll get upstairs and have lunch with Donata. I'll be like, hey, what did you do today? She's like, oh, I called the Irish Data Protection Authority to get their opinion on one of these laws they have. I'm like, who did you call today? Like,
well,
it's
I have questions and I need answers, and I'm gonna get them from the source.
Yeah, I love it. But yeah, I think from where this person was coming from, they said the critical things that I think that need to be washed away from the mindset of the agency owner, which is, hey, like when should I be talking about, when should I be referring a client to a law firm? Every time. Every time you build a website that collects personal information, do not be the person to make the decision for your client, whether they're a for-profit or nonprofit. Do not be the person to make the decision. You're the one who already helped them you built them contact forms. You may have forced them to comply with privacy laws. Do not think, oh, I'm smarter than everyone else. This client's small, therefore I'm not going to bring up this discussion. No. Mention, have an attorney. If you don't have one, I will provide referrals. Mention a generator. That's a cost-effective solution that a lot of people can afford. Do not be the person to be like, oh, my client's too small for this, because that is a recipe for getting bit in the butt later.
Yeah, and also if you do use an attorney, before you sign up for their service and before you pay their retainer, you should ask them, what is your plan for keeping this privacy policy up to date? Because that's the best litmus test for an attorney you're going to get. Because an attorney that says, oh, well, I don't know, you should be fine. That's not the attorney that you want. Yeah. That's a red flag. If the attorney says, yes, I monitor privacy laws through these sources and I will notify you every single time there's a new privacy bill that's proposed, that's a good attorney then. So keep in mind.
Good deal. Good. All right. Next one. What would best practices for privacy pages be for international websites? Should these be in multiple languages?
So generally, a privacy policy should be provided in each language that the website is provided in. So for example, if your website is provided in English and French, your privacy policy should be available in English and French. Most websites are just in English, at least the ones in the US. So if your website's in English, that's the language that you need to have it in. There was like two parts to that question. I'm sorry, would you mind?
International.
International. Okay, so again, when it comes to international, a lot of small businesses like to think that they do business all over the world, everywhere that they could, anyone who resides, they do business there. When it comes to privacy law compliance, you don't do business everywhere. You don't do business in the entire world. You do not want to do that because that's going to cost you so much money in compliance. So what you really need to think about is where you have customers, whose PII you're collecting, and you need to do a risk analysis to see whether or not you want to comply with every single privacy law out there in the world. And I can tell you right now that Coca-Cola doesn't comply with every single privacy law in the world. So you need to make sure that you have a focus. So in addition, just because your website is available to be seen by everyone doesn't mean that you do business everywhere. So just because somebody can access your website from Russia doesn't mean that you do business in Russia. So that's something also to keep in mind. Just make sure that you're being reasonable with yourself, because if you want to say that you do business everywhere, that's great. But just a word of warning, that's going to cost you a lot in compliance.
Okay, good. That's a good answer. As I look through the rest, I think most of that, there is one other that I don't know might be worth talking about. If you guys have ever heard of Ayubenda, I've used it in the past. Somebody asked about that and asked if it helps. They also asked if you would recommend that over term speed. And then the difference between US and Canada in terms of privacy laws. That was kind of the same person that had all three of those.
Sorry, what was that last part?
The difference between US versus Canada in terms of privacy laws. I'll post in the chat here.
Well, maybe I can talk about US versus Canada first.
Yeah, go ahead.
So in the US, we don't have an overarching federal privacy law that governs business websites. What we have is a bunch of states that are proposing their own privacy bills and passing their own privacy laws, creating like a patchwork of privacy laws that businesses need to comply with. Canada does have an overarching federal law, PIPEDA, but that privacy law might be going away soon and being replaced by much more stringent privacy law. So there's been a new privacy bill that has been proposed in Canada, and essentially it would allow Canadians to sue businesses located anywhere, including outside of Canada, for violations. So those are really the main differences between United States and Canadian privacy laws.
Awesome. Now, this person said, I recently purchased Ayubenda from AppSumo. Do you think that helps? It depends would be my answer. So I used Ayubenda several times back as an agency owner. It was part of my reason for why I started Termageddon, that, and I married a privacy attorney who raised some thoughts to me about just what the competitor landscape looked like. But anyways, do I think that helps? Well, I don't know what that's in reference to. Does it help when compared to nothing? Sure, hopefully it does. The thing about Ayubenda, and it looks like they mentioned TermSpeed as well, is that I don't think, I'm not aware of either of these companies figuring out what privacy laws you actually need to comply with before you start getting your policy generated. So as I understand it, the user flow is that they say, do you want CCPA disclosures? Do you want GDPR disclosures? And you just say yes to that. And if I'm wrong, please, someone correct me. I'm certainly not trying to say the wrong thing here. But I think the fundamental thing that's being missed here is figuring out what privacy laws you need to comply with in the first place. That's an extremely important feature. One thing I will say, though, I like Ayubenda if you are a business in Europe only servicing residents of the European Union. I think they do a kick-ass job with GDPR, and I think that's because they're based in Italy and that they've been around since GDPR has been around. We have too, but they've been much more famous than us for that time. But yeah, that would be my 2 cents. TermSpeed, I can't find anything on this company, like who they are, where they're located. I think they're in New York.
I think they formed their company in Delaware, which is what a lot of foreign companies do.
Yeah.
To claim that they do business in the United States.
The fact is, they're a competitor of ours, and I still can't find out who these people are. So I mean, to me, like that's not my style. Like I want to know who I want to work. I want to know the people I'm working with, especially for privacy policies. So I can't. But TermSpeed, I think Steve mentioned this. TermSpeed is the company that has a free privacy policy that ends up being not so free. by the end of it. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend either. I'd recommend Termageddon, of course.
I'd also check like updates, like when's the last time that they updated the policies, when's the last time they talked about new bills or new laws or new regulations coming out. I think that's very important too.
Who's on their team?
Yeah.
That's a big one. So.
Okay, so from Google Forms, is it necessary to give a notice to users even if you never track them? So I'm not so there's two different things that are being talked about: tracking and then collecting PII. So privacy laws will apply when a website collects PII. So if a website does not have a form, if the website does not have analytics, if the website does not track users in any way, if it does not collect any PII, you don't need to have a privacy policy. So that's something to keep in mind. But most websites do that. So most websites will have some type of analytics service, some type of form, and that's when PII is being collected, and that's when you need to have a privacy policy. But if you're not doing any of that, if you're not collecting any PII, then you don't need to comply.
Yep.
All right, I think that's it. I'm looking through the rest, and you guys already answered most of this. So,
awesome.
you know.
Nice.
So we have 17 brave souls that have remained during a 2-hour privacy sprint. My hat is off to you. If you are interested in Termageddon, register. We'll hook you up with something cool. You're some brave people here.
Yeah, there were actually a lot of people from the meetup that asked that they couldn't attend tonight for whatever reason. They asked for the replay, so I'll be sending that out as well, so everybody will get that too.
That's awesome. Yeah, and if you think about any questions afterwards, feel free to email us too. Our emails are in the chat.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
It was quite
Virtual round of applause here for Hans and Nonana. Nice job.
Thank you.
We really appreciate you guys coming out. This is we started this in the fall, and this is probably our 5th or 6th presentation. So this is great. Yeah, we've had some good luck with presenters so far, so it's been really good.
Well, hey, not to self-promote here, but I ran a 12-person web design agency. Oh, sorry, I can't believe I didn't even mention this at the beginning. Termageddon is built on Elementor. How did I not mention that? So, by the way, Elementor is how we built our website. So, anyways, aside from that, if there is an interest in discussing what it's like scaling a web agency or what it's like selling a web agency, I would be more than happy to have that discussion if that interests anyone. Doing selling websites, that's also something I'd love to speak on. If you can't tell, I really like to just help. So just if anyone's interested, or if you just want to have a one-off conversation, I am more than available and would be happy to talk about that.
I've never gotten that offer.
Well, I'm going to be taking you up on that offer soon.
Cool.
Nice.
I'm excited.
Awesome.
Great. Well, thank you. A couple things here. Let us know what you thought of the meetup, everybody. I put a link out there to Google Forms. Also, if you're interested in joining our Chicago Elementor Slack channel, fill out that form. Let me know. I'll add you to the channel. So we kind of converse in there, share websites, share, plugins, everything else. Just a good place to network and help each other grow for sure. I'll also email it out tomorrow along with the replay. For our meetup next month, we will be going over using Google Insights to enhance your website performance. So I'm still confirming with the presenter to make sure that she's good to go, but I assume that she is, so we will have that. Also in March, we have Tyler speaking. Tyler, sorry, let me get your thing up here. He's going to be talking about designing a landing page in Elementor using SEO versus SEM. So make sure you guys join. Looking for presenters for the future. So if anybody's interested in presenting, please holler at me. Let me know. I'll get you down on the list for one of the future ones here in the beautiful 2021 that we are in. Hopefully better than 2020. We're only 13 days in, so we've got some time to make it better. We'll see how it goes.
Only up from here.
Yeah, only up from here.
Everything that has happened this year, I'm kind of missing 2020.
Yeah, so far not out to the best start, but we'll see.
Yeah, we had a tough start.
That's right.
I'm missing 2020 at this point.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, thanks everybody. Again, I'll email everybody tomorrow. I'll share Hans and Donana's information with you in an email, so you'll get that. If you guys have any questions, just let us know. Thanks for joining. Thanks guys for presenting. It was awesome.
And Renata, thank you very much.
Very much appreciate it.
presentation, Mike.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, Tyler. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
See you
Bye.
later.